What if someone feels like they can't reach out to a mentor or a coach or a guide to help them solve their own problems,
Yeah.
whether it be a career or a personal problem? How can an individual be a great coach to themselves without having someone they look up to guiding them?
It's tricky because we are very slippery with ourselves.
And we get stuck. And
we're slippery, we get stuck, we get sneaky. It's hard to get out of our own heads around this. So I think there are a couple of things you can think about. One is, you don't necessarily have to be paying money to a coach or a mentor or a guide to kind of get this kind of professional support you might like. You can just go, let me see if I can figure something out with the people I already know and I like in my life. Like, I had a mastermind group for 15 years. Like, me and 5 other people. We would check in pretty much daily, like 3 or 4 days a week. We just like, here's what I'm up to. We talk on the phone every 2 weeks. And then once a year, we get together for 3 or 4 days to hang out and have fun and go deeper. And that was free. But we're going to support each other in terms of what we can do here. So I do think there's a way that you can be the person who reaches out and says, hey, what if we supported each other? Because I could do with a bit of support, and maybe you could do with a bit of support, and let's do our best guess to figure this out. But if that feels too much, I think that's when you come into the power of something like journaling. Because in some ways, you've got to get out of your own head. So, when I'm journaling, I tried doing like the 2-minute morning stuff, where you like write pages every morning. I'm like, I just can't do that. I just don't have enough to say, or I'm too bored, or I want to check my email.
Yeah.
So I have 3 questions at the start of the day and 2 questions at the end of the day. The 3 questions at the start of the day for me are, what do I notice? So for me, what do I notice is about what am I thinking, and what am I feeling, and what's right there in front of me, and what's been bugging me, and what was I dreaming about last night, and what's out of the window. It's in some ways it's about trying to be more present. But for me, Lewis, I don't know if the same is true for you. It's also trying to be a little more connected to my feelings. Like, I'm not that good at that.
Not just thinking, but experiencing your feelings.
I'm a head guy. And part of the work I'm trying to do is I'm like, there's so much knowledge in your body and in your feelings. And I wish I could just get a bit more connected to that. So what do you notice helps me with that. What are you grateful for is the second question, because that's just a silver bullet, really.
Yeah.
There's so much research that says regular small acts of gratitude just make you a happier person.
True.
And then the third thing I ask is, what's the one thing today? Because I have too many to-dos. I'm notoriously overcommitted. And I'm like, if I can only do one thing, what's the one thing? So I don't finish the day. I've done 48 of my tasks, just not the 2 ones that I had to do.
Right.
And then at the end of the
eat the frog concept.
Yeah,
right?
eat the frog concept. You got it. And then at the end of the day, I go, what was best about today? Sometimes that helps me figure out what progress I've made. So, Teresa Amabile, Harvard business professor, she's like, people get happy by making small progress on stuff that matters. And I'm like, but sometimes sometimes it's not about progress. Sometimes it's like, just what was the thing I most want to be grateful for and think was the best about the day? And then the fifth question for me at the end of the day is, who do I want to reach out to tomorrow? Because not only is there all sorts of research about an increase in loneliness in America and in Canada and across the world, but like, I feel lonely. I feel a bit isolated. I'm like, I know lots of good people, and I'm not naturally wired to be reaching out to them. So who do I want to reach out to keep being the person who says, let's connect. Let's build those I-thou relationships. Let me be still present in your life.
I like those questions. So these are 5 questions, 3 in the morning, 2 at night to ask yourself, to be more present, to be more connected to who you are, what you're up to in life. So the I-thou relationships is about service and relationship with others, right?
It's kind of like showing up fully. So I have a sense of who you are. You're present with me. I'm not just getting the mask.
Yeah.
I've got the mask off. And even if I've got a mask on, I'm like, I know the mask you're wearing, and I have a sense of what's behind that mask. Because, you take off one mask and there's another more subtle mask.
Yes.
There's masks all the way down in some ways, but it's like you're getting close to putting aside that. You're not trying to necessarily kind of prove status with each other, kind of one up each other, but you're just like, I'm seeing the best of you, and I'm doing the best I can to bring out the best of you, and you're doing the same for me. That's the magic.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And how does the coaching habit support with I-thou relationships?
Yeah. This is what I love about this question, Lewis, is it gets to the thing that I mostly don't talk about with the coaching habit, which is kind of the way it disrupts hierarchy and it disrupts power. So most of my work happens in a corporate setting. I mean, the coaching habit gets read everywhere. I get letters from parents and letters from pastors and letters from sports coaches. So it's transcended that. But I wrote it thinking of this middle manager. And organizations have a way of just setting people up in hierarchy with each other, which is inherently an I-it relationship.
Yes.
And if you're the boss and somebody comes to you with a problem, lots of us go, my job is to have the answer, which freaks bosses out because they're like, there's so much going on. I don't know the answer. I barely know the answers to the stuff that I'm responsible for, yet alone the answers for the stuff you're responsible for.
Right.
But they're like, this is how I help. This is how I prove value. This is how I prove my authority. And what you're doing in answering a question is you're handing the humanity back to that person, saying, look, I'm going to raise your status and raise your authority and give you the autonomy, the competence and the confidence and the self-sufficiency to figure this stuff out itself. And in doing that, you're really saying, I'm giving you your full humanity. I'm not taking it away from you.
Right.
And I think in that moment, you have this opportunity to be human to human as you work together rather than boss to subordinate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what are the main questions that every coach should use to effectively empower the person they're communicating with and build a deeper relationship?
Well, in the coaching habit, there are 7 good questions. I mean, there are 5 different questions in this new book, but in the coaching habit, there are 7 good questions. So I can give you a taste of those.
Yes.
The first, the bookends, question 1 and question 7. So if people are listening and they're like, I'd quite like to be more coach-like, stay curious longer, but how do I start? It's like, I'm sure I could do it if I got going, but I'm not quite sure what the first thing is. The kickstart question is, what's on your mind? And what's really powerful about that is it's not what's on the agenda, and it's not what do we always talk about, and it's not here's what I want to talk about. It says, what's on your mind? What are you excited about or worried about or nervous about or just feel like it's like, this is the thing I've got to talk about. So it's this act of giving and sharing of authority and autonomy. And the final question in the series, so if this is the bookends, how to start and how to finish, is the learning question is, what was most useful or most valuable here for you?
In this conversation.
And I do this, I was just speaking at a group of, in front of 500 people yesterday. And at the end of this session, I'm like, turn to the person next to you and like, what was most useful and most valuable for you? And what's amazing is it's never really what I think. And again, it's when you ask this question, you get 3 gifts. One is you help them name the thing that they're taking away. And they might have missed it otherwise. So they're actually going, okay, I'm actually articulating what was most useful. And when they do that, neurons fire and people remember the stuff.
Yeah.
Secondly, and here's the gift, you get to hear what was most useful and most valuable. And sometimes it's different from what you were thinking. And sometimes you're thinking, that wasn't valuable at all, that conversation. I was just jazz-handing my way through the whole thing. But they're like, no, actually, this is what really landed.
And that might be powerful for one group, but not for a different group.
That's right. And, when I was speaking to these 500 people, and I was like, so tell me some of the things that landed. I'm like, 10 different people, 10 different things they took away from this session with me. And then what's also manipulative, but in a good way, is that you're not saying, was this a useful conversation? You're saying, what was most useful about this conversation? So you are framing this conversation as a useful, valuable conversation, which makes them find it more useful and valuable, which makes them find you more useful and valuable, which strengthens the relationship.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what is the difference between a keystone conversation versus a normal conversation?
Yeah. So this is the heart of this new book, which is like, okay, so we're trying to, our working relationships have such a big impact on our happiness and our success.
Yeah, it's true.
Like,
spend a lot of time at work.
You spend a lot of time at work. And if you take a moment and you think to like one of the hardest working relationships you've had, it's a real struggle. It was a bit miserable for you. And you think of the back and forth of what happened. And then you think of the impact it had on you. It's significant. Like
Nice.
you hear people talk about it. It's like, I felt distrusted. I opted out. I shrunk. I lost my confidence. I quit my job. Basically, a bad working relationship will shrink you and diminish you. What's the hard lesson that you keep having to learn? How much is enough? I mean, these are all endlessly big questions that you can sit and wrestle with. I mean, if I'd asked you 10 years ago how much is enough, you'd have had an answer.
Right.
And it would have been really interesting, and I would have sat there and gone, that is interesting.
Right.